everyone. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is Black Tech Talk, episode 918. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust. I'm here with my co-panelist, Nagon 11.
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Good, brother. Yourself?
Excellent.
All right. In December of 2024, CompTIA released their latest version of certification series, which is called the CloudNetX. Now, CloudNetX is the certification that is a part of the Expert series. CompTIA has moved from the plus factor to the X factor. So X is the pinnacle of what is considered to be the mastery of skills. So let me go over it really quickly. This has been released probably less than a month or so ago. CompTIA CloudNetX validates the advanced skills needed to design, engineer, and integrate secure, scalable networking solutions in hybrid environments. Let me make sure I zoom in on this. All right, it says that the premier network architecture certification uniquely tailored to in-demand job roles, CompTIA CloudNetX maps to real-world demands of hybrid network architecture job roles, validating advanced skills necessary for excelling in hybrid networking environments. CompTIA CloudNetX is the only cloud certification on the market that confirms the technical and hands-on skills necessary for secure hybrid network operations across all platforms. And it says that CloudNetX maps to three nice DCWF work roles: network operations specialist, security architect, enterprise architect. So what we're talking about here is moving away from just the cybersecurity aspect and moving to the network architecture aspect in the cloud. And so this is a next step for CompTIA, but this is something that has been long overdue. Traditionally, CompTIA has had the Network Plus and maybe Server Plus and maybe Cloud Plus, but now this is taken it to the whole nother level. This is talking about how do you define and design scalable network solutions inside the cloud itself, which a lot of people are not talking about. So let me further go into this a little bit further. Network architecture: analyze business requirements to design and configure secure network architecture on premises and cloud environments. Network monitoring: apply and configure concepts and tools related to network monitoring and performance automation and scripting. That's really big. Maintenance: perform network operation and maintenance. Security design: analyze requirements to design for network security, availability, zero trust, identity, and access management technologies. Troubleshooting: troubleshoot network issues related to connectivity, performance, access, and security. This is pretty elite stuff. If I had to say so myself, I didn't see this coming from CompTIA. I thought that they were going to stop at the advanced security practitioner, but this goes one step beyond. I think that this is good for the person who's looking to up their skills on a vendor neutral status, because no one wants to be wedded to either Cisco, Juniper, or Aruba, or some of the other branded networks, because in order for you to get those certifications, you have to actually go through their training and take their training and go through their their paid credits and whatnot, and you may not have access to that, and it may not matter because Cisco, Juniper, HP, name your brands, they're all proprietary. And just because Cisco has their way of doing things and Juniper has their way of doing things doesn't necessarily mean that it's all the same, because it's all tailored to their products and their products only. So
that's exactly correct.
Let me just go over this really quickly. It says exam description: the CompTIA CloudNetX certification exam will certify the successful candidate has knowledge and skills required to analyze business requirements, design and configure a secure network architecture for on-premises cloud. I went over that already. Wait a second, who's that? There's a maximum of 90 questions, multiple choice and performance-based. This is really interesting because traditionally people are used to multiple choice, A, B, C, D, right? Choose your best answer, right? Performance-based means that you have to, if you don't, okay, here's the deal. They have simulators within the test itself. Whatever that simulator is, you have to get it right. If you don't pass any of the performance-based questions, you're not going to pass the exam. That's just the reality. And it's pass or fail only, no scale score. So it doesn't say like you got 500, 700, 750, 1000, doesn't matter. Either you know it or you don't. That's their approach to this. And you get 165 minutes to do it. Typically, the way how I do certifications exams is that I go through what I know and not what I don't know. So if I don't know something, so if you have 90 questions, right? And you have 165 minutes, that means you have roughly 1 minute and maybe 10 seconds to get, to provide an answer to a question, right? And so, oh, sorry.
No, you're absolutely correct. What you're really saying is you don't want to waste time trying to struggle over each question that comes up. You want to go to what you know very quickly, get that done first, and then you come back and deal with some of the more difficult answers that you might not have a chance to make a faster decision on. So that's the quickest way to get through those exams and the most efficient way to do it. So that's exactly correct, Mike, as far as how you're saying how you set up and take that type of test.
Yeah, I typically go for the things that I do know, the low-hanging fruit. I skip it. I always mark, come back to, right, on the exam. I always want to come back to it because once I get through the things that I do know, then those same questions that I didn't answer before, they're going to come back up. And maybe I have a lot of free time, a lot more free time and bandwidth to kind of play with it. But I want to make sure I get to those performance-based questions because if you don't pass those performance-based questions, you're not passing the exam. That's the reality with CompTIA exams now. It's very strict. You got to get it right. Some of them may be pretty much straight to the point, but then there's other ones where you look and you're like, is this really what they want me to do, or is it something else? One of the things about certifications that should be known, and for people who listen to this and have taken certification in the past, and those who have not, there's a way that the book says to do something versus how we do something in the real world. And from a corporate environment perspective, especially from a government perspective, we may not always rely on the book because the book may not necessarily be cultivated to our needs within the environment itself. And so sometimes if we do something in security, it's not 100% to the T of what industry standard says that we should do. We do what we can with the environment that we have. And so if we don't have ServiceNow, we don't have Remedy or Jira or whatever it is, we have to finagle it so that it works for us. But in the exam is going to say you have to do it this way or else. And so that's the framework that we're working with right now. Okay. And so it says, how does CompTIA CloudNetX compare? It's one exam with 90 questions and 165 minutes. 10 prerequisites are 10 years with 5 in network architect role. That's really interesting. Architectural roles are really difficult to get in, whether you're talking about IT architect, solution architect, network architect, security architect. That's really difficult to get in. Enterprise architecture, really difficult to get into because you have to have some prior experience. You're not going to go from help desk to architecture overnight. Not going to happen. No one's going to allow you to design their network if you don't even understand the basic principles of the network itself. And so these sort of things matter for the most part. What's it comparable to? Cisco Certified Internetwork Expert, CCIE. This is the big kahuna, right, that Cisco offers from a certification standpoint. And what they're talking about here is 2 exams. It's 120 minutes written core exam and then an 8-hour lab exam. This is the PhD for networking for Cisco. This is their thesis. There is no other way around this. It does say the prerequisite is no formal prerequisites necessary, but that's assuming that you know what you're doing. The way I was taught Cisco networking was with physical routers, physical switches. That's how things were done back in the day. I know there's simulators out there where you can kind of, play with the simulator on your own terms, but there's nothing like having that physical hardware in your environment, hearing those fans spin up and logging in, and having those physical wires connected, and having those laptops connected to it. It's just a different experience when you're doing it from a physical standpoint. So I would say, just because it says no formal prerequisites doesn't necessarily mean, man, you should go from help desk to CCIE. I just don't see that happening.
No, but certainly, you certainly can prep for it. And one thing that you do want to say here is that going for that CCIE, the fail rate on that exam is just pretty high.
Yeah.
So it is a monster. You really have to put a lot of time into studying for that, and some people take a year and so forth, and upwards of more, really trying to prepare for that CCIE. But one thing I will say, once you do get that CCIE certification, you do walk with a very big stick. So that gives you a lot of you have a lot of options in the industry once you get that. But that is a very challenging, very difficult exam to pass.
Absolutely. Cisco Certified Design Expert. 2 exams, 120-minute written core exam, and an 8-hour exam. Okay. Lab exam. It's the same thing. It's another PhD for Cisco. Design experts, internetwork experts. These are the big kahunas that Cisco has to offer. So I would not take that lightly. I know that CompTIA has a prerequisite, but that's just, a general prerequisite. This is what they're expecting of you. So if you take the exam, there is no gimmies or gotchas there. This is what it is, and this is what the answer is. And if you don't have an understanding of what it is and what the answer is going to be, you ain't gonna be able to pass that. So that's the grounding for that. AWS Certified Advanced Networking Specialty. Now, this is interesting because AWS is their, the 800-pound gorilla when it comes to cloud computing. But what's interesting with this, to me, the CloudNetX and the AWS cert are probably more in line than, let's say, the CCIE and the CCDE, primarily because Cisco does not necessarily have the same approach to cloud computing that AWS has. And so AWS is a, proprietary environment within itself. And so 1 exam, 65 questions, 170 minutes. The prerequisites are 5 years hands-on experience architecting and implementing network solutions. AWS isn't that difficult, but it's proprietary enough that you have to understand what's going on, because AWS changes their environment on a weekly to monthly basis. New features, new products, new updates come out on a daily and weekly basis. And if you're not necessarily immersed in that environment, you're going to have difficulty understanding some of the nuances that go on in there. And so I think that the CloudNetX, I think what CompTIA is offering is really critical for the industry right now, because everybody's not always working at AWS. You still have a lot of corporations that still have traditional physical on-prem installed in the environment, and then you still have some companies that are adopting SaaS, right? And so they do have software as a service and sort of platforms as a service. They're still adopting it, but they still have not necessarily went headfirst into it. What CompTIA is saying is we're vendor neutral. You don't necessarily need to comply with a lot of these branded sort of technologies. You know, we have our approach to this from a open network, open architecture standpoint. And so I think this is a good step for CompTIA. And I will be taking this exam sometime within the year once it's released. It hasn't been released yet. It's only been 30 days since it's been announced. So exam preparation, CNX 001, you know, they do have interactive labs and stuff like that. And the renewal rate is every 3 years, and you need 75 continuing educational units for renewal. And so that could be a matter of taking webinars. It could be a matter of going to training seminars. It could be a matter of a variety of things. So in order to update yourself. And so that's what's going on right now. And it says right here, organizations that contributed to the development of CompTIA CloudNetX, AWS, we just spoke about that, Google, Fidelity Investments, Johns Hopkins, BMO. So this is respected by the tier one brands such as AWS and Google and Fidelity from a fintech standpoint. You know, Fidelity used to just be a financial institution. Now they're a fintech company. And so they're looking at this a little bit differently. Jobs you can land with CompTIA CloudNetX, network architect, security architect, you know, that's what's going on right now. And so I'd be interested in seeing how this plays out over the long term. Will a lot of people adopt it? Probably not. But I think that once the government, from a DoD standpoint, starts requiring it for, you know, IAT 3, level 3, you know, I think people will start adopting it from a government standpoint, and then it will start to trickle down probably over the next year and a half. When you start seeing some, you know, some of your lead analysts, lead engineers start adopting it because they got training dollars to do it, and so they went and did it. So that's what's going on here. Any thoughts on that, Nago?
No, I think that was excellent. That's an excellent breakdown. You're pretty succinct. You had a nice comprehensive breakdown on that. That was excellent. Because as far as what's coming up in 2025, as far as you know, getting into tech, the big jobs, and what's going on, I would have to say, without a doubt, you know, CompTIA and their whole program with respect to certification is definitely right on the money. As we start to look at, you know, these positions that are coming up in 2025, because things did kind of slow down a little bit in coming towards not so much the end of 22, but 23, 2024. There was kind of, you know, a bit of some layoffs in the tech industry, so there was some slowdown, but things are starting to heat up again, and certainly for coming up this year and for 2026 as well. There are going to be some top jobs that are going to be expected to be in high demand, and the skills and experience you should look for, that we should be looking for when we look to hire people, are going to be, you know, certainly in demand, and there are going to be some key positions I think that we really want to talk about and look at, you know. And I would really put, you know, I would say the top 10, going from the least paid to the highest, would be your help desk, tier 1, your desktop support analyst, then you're moving up to your systems administrators, then to your more senior consultants, then moving into your developer, program analysts, your system engineers, then, well, just like what Mike went over, also your cloud, your network and cloud architects are going to be very much in demand as well. Software developers, your software engineers, your data engineers as well. Certainly you're going to have your cybersecurity people, as I had mentioned, but that's kind of where things are going to be kind of really heating up. And really, when we start to look at that, when we start to look at this, we're going to want people to have definitely certain types of skills. And once again, as far as the certifications are concerned, AWS certified data analytics, especially if you're going to be a data engineer or so forth, and you're going to want to have people who have experience with, let's say, a Cloudera, you know, data platform, Google certified, you know, professional data engineers. You know, you're going to want to see. You're definitely going to want to see that if you're looking at, say, like a data engineer or so forth. If you're going to be moving into some of these other positions, we can get into that even a bit more. But what I wanted to cover first, what Mike is talking about, is very important to have these certifications really to kind of move into this industry. There's a lot of opportunity. It's going to be very big here. What I want to be very clear about also is anyone who's looking to come in, I got certified in 2 weeks and I'm sort of making 110K a year. No BS. I don't care who's talking that. Not going to happen. All right. It's going to take you a while, but certainly learning these systems and getting this experience is certainly going to be key. Nobody's going to let you jump over and be a software engineer and create their software programs and applications for their needs of who doesn't have a lot of experience and haven't worked in a cross collaborative environment and so forth. It's not going to happen. But certainly as time goes on, you start to get some experience, you start to move up, you'll certainly get a chance to have that coming through. But I did want to just mention, those are going to be some of the top positions that are there, and what kind of experience you're going to look to have is going to be key. So if we're going to look to be a software developer, that's going to be a very key job coming up in 2025. So there are going to be people who are going to be looking at increasing their development skills and learning some of these programming languages and developing. Software developers very much are typically focused on building programs that that are used, let's say internally on or mobile devices, while the systems software developers are focused on creating software for consumers or, let's say, clients outside of the organization. That's a key thing that they also do. So the demand for software developers remains very strong. As companies embrace digital transformation, they begin creating their own internal or external software programs. So what types of requirements that they're going to want you to have and be strong with. Employers are going to look for. Sometimes they're going to look for a bachelor's degree in computer science, so forth. But others, will look to see if you have some technical experience. A technical degree may be helpful, and and especially paired with several with some years of practical experience, so you can get that. But getting some certifications with some of these programming languages, Python and so forth, important. And important to have, in these courses are there. Mike's talking about CompTIA and getting certified in these areas. Important to have that. So I think we need to talk about that and look to plot real paths for people to kind of really get into this development and begin to succeed. Go ahead, Mike. You going to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I need to finish this article.
All right.
This is from helpnetsecurity.com. This was put out the last of the month of 2024. The state of cybersecurity and IT talent shortages. This article highlights key findings and trendings in the 2024 IT and cybersecurity skills gap, from the shortage of cybersecurity talent to the rising demand for certifications and upskilling programs, offering insights into the current state of skills development in the tech industry. We'll start from the top. Most women in IT work overtime to advance in their careers, while 32% of respondents already think that men and women are treated equally in the workplace. 31% of women strongly believe that men are promoted faster. 71% of women reported working longer hours to improve their chances of career advancement. Regarding career development opportunities for women in tech and IT, 34% of respondents only somewhat agree that there are adequate training and development programs for women to advance in their careers. I'm not a woman, so I won't try to speak for women, but I think that if you remove gender from this, I think this is absolutely true. That I think gender and race are kind of synonymous in this, but I think that when it comes to who's working a lot more hours and what kind of access to training is available, this is true. In my experience in the IT industry, has been that companies will brag about their profits, quarter over quarter, year over year, and have these sort of rallies and whatnot, whether it's at NASDAQ or wherever it is. But when it comes to training is always limited to $3,000 for the year for each person, right? Just throwing out a rough figure, 3,000, 3,500, $5,000. You're not going to get much training out of that. Okay. You can get some training, but you're not going to get the sufficient training that is necessary to advance yourself. And so that's why I point to CompTIA sometimes, because that's probably the most you're going to get out of it. But if people are pushing back against those sort of certifications and some kinds of trainings, your wiggle room is going to be very limited. If you think about SANS is, $8,000 to $10,000, even up to $15,000 to $20,000. You're not going to do much with $5,000 for training. And part of the reason I think this is because someone in leadership or in management, that for that matter, I think management and leadership are two different things. Someone is making a decision that we're only going to appropriate this much for the budget for training and advancement. And what typically ends up happening here is people get trapped in roles that they don't really like, or trapped in roles that they probably shouldn't be in. And the ability to get out of these roles becomes so limited that either A, they quit, or B, they start what they call quiet quitting, which you heard a couple of years ago, where people just do the bare minimum to get the job done and then they go home. They don't want anything to do with the corporate culture. They don't want anything to do with the job itself. And, they're not going to do 8+ hours. They're going to do 8 hours. They're going to do just enough to get by through the day. This is what creates it. And so if you took gender out of this equation, in this scenario, I think everybody can relate to this. Nicole, you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that's that's absolutely right on the money. Absolutely.
Yeah. CISP and CompTIA Security Plus lead as the most desired security credentials. 33.9% of tech professionals report a shortage of AI security skills, particularly around emerging vulnerabilities like prompt injection. Despite cloud computing's 2-decade presence, 38.9% of respondents identify cloud security as the most significant skills shortage. Yeah, that's true. But it goes back to the first analysis that we just had 30 seconds ago. If you don't have the budget to train people for their advancement in their skill and their upskilling, yeah, you're going to have a shortage in cloud security. I myself work in cloud security, but I had to do all this stuff on my own, and it's not cheap. Okay, that stuff is not cheap, so it comes at a cost. And unfortunately, the IT industry, and I don't want to go on a soapbox, but the IT industry has a lot of cultural issues that it needs to deal with. When you think about master electricians and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, you go from, an apprentice to a journeyman to a master technician, a master electrical engineer, through stages. Okay, you have to accrue certain amount of hours before you can even reach these stages. In the IT industry, it's not like that. Okay, it's all subjective, and based on whatever corporation or whatever organization you're a part of. And unfortunately, that has plagued the industry for a long, long time. And I think some people are starting to come around to it. Mark Zuckerberg talked about this about a year or so ago about managers managing managers. He didn't want that. I think he sees the writing on the wall himself. But a lot of other corporate and enterprise leaders don't necessarily think this way. They kind of use the same conventional wisdom that they had from the 90s and think they can apply it in a new world of cloud computing and AI, and it doesn't work. It's not a one-for-one fit. And unfortunately, people start to have a skills drift because we just don't have enough bandwidth to do the training, and 2, we don't have enough training available, and 3, we don't have enough budget for the training. And so that's some of the challenges that you deal with in this industry. Nicole, you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, exactly. When you start talking about bandwidth and so forth, that's a very key point. That definitely has to be expanded, but that's very accurate, Mike. I have to say you know, you're right on point with a lot of this right here. You're right on point with that.
Yeah, 41% concerned about job security due to skills gaps. 95% of surveyed employees said the organization has a talent development program in place, but only 25% find it to be highly effective, with a lack of time, 42%, learning formats, 30%, and leadership support, 26%, as their main obstacles. We just talked about this 30 seconds ago, that leadership support, or the lack thereof, is problematic. A quarter of the people surveyed believe this, and learning formats. Yeah, I'm a visual learner. If I see something being done, I can grasp it better. But I also like to read too. I like the physical book, even though I got an ebook reader next to me. I might download a book, but if the physical book is available, I'm gonna order that too, because I just need to feel that physical book, because that's how I was raised. But some people have different ways of how they learn. And lack of time goes back to the original at the beginning of the article, which is people putting in extended hours. Yeah, I've seen that. People have to be on call on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. You got kids, for that matter, if you're in your deep 30s and early 40s, your ability to, find time to learn, to study and improve your skills, it's going to be limited. And so there needs to be a work-life balance, and I don't think that corporations really understand that, because we talked about this last year, Amazon's return to office. I was looking at some data from New York, and they were saying that people spend up to 90 minutes in traffic in New York just to get to work. It's not uncommon that going through that that congestion area, you before the cameras were put up there, people were sitting in traffic, for quite some time. You think about going to and from work, and they want you to come back to the office 4 or 5 days a week. Where do you get time to study? What are you going to do? Audibles, while you drive? I think that's bullshit, to be quite frank. I think, I don't think that's fair. What's your thoughts on it, Nicole?
Well, that's a real key issue. And some years ago, I was working with a tech company called Globix, and they were in Manhattan, and a good tech firm. What they did have, which was way ahead of their time, we're going back now a good maybe 15, 16 years. What they did have was periods at work, and they had these, they had all these different areas that you could study, various areas of technology, Java and so forth. You had various classes that you could actually get in, that they had going on inside of the company, that you could actually learn. So what I think the companies are going to have to do now is take some time while people are coming to work, while they're working, have a period where they may have a half hour or 45 minutes or so, where there are classes and stuff that they have to kind of maybe mandated to do at work to kind of upgrade and move their skills up, which is kind of a part of their job, further skill development and study and so forth. That should be maybe a part of the process. I know that they want a lot of production coming out of people, but since this is an issue and it's going to be a continuing issue, and having the proper, the staff and properly trained and expanding on that, they may have to incorporate some of this. The companies are going to have to be a bit more creative in how they're going to be dealing with some of this issue, because we're looking at an issue, a problem that's really going to grow as opposed to getting lesser, to decreasing.
Yeah, one of the strategies that we had adopted last year was lunch and learns. Basically, each one from the team has to do a lunch and learn. And so what you know, you're basically doing a knowledge transfer and skills transfer to other folks. And so that's one way you can do it, rather than to be sitting in these hour-long team meetings, looking at yourselves on the camera, man.
Good boy.
People should be sitting in conference rooms, ordering lunch, corporation pays for it, and we do some knowledge transfer and some skills chop up. And so I think that's key. Once a week, we usually do it on Wednesdays or Thursdays, where everybody's in for the all hands meeting and things like that. So these are ways that you can do it, but every organization isn't like that. And so, all right, organizational change recruit. Organizations change recruitment strategies to find cyber talent. Respondents place such high value on certifications that 89% said they would pay for an employee to obtain a cybersecurity certification. 70% of respondents indicated that it is difficult to find candidates with technology-focused certifications. Nagone, you're a recruiter. What's your thoughts on that?
That's a fact. That's a big problem. And that is going to increase. What a lot of companies are starting to do now. They are starting to go to and starting to hire a lot more, let's say, consultants and people who are maybe not even so much full-time people. When I mean, working with the company permanently, but dealing with contractors. That's how a lot of us are actually looking to bridge some of that gap. But that's a real issue that we're coming into 2025. There is without doubt once again, it's now becoming a candidate-driven market. So now it's coming down to, can we get the right people for these opportunities? And as I said, the top jobs, stuff that we're looking for, are data engineers and software engineers and software developers, cloud architects, system engineers, big types, big type of positions, sys administrators. So we're definitely going to deal with a lot more contractors now. So that's more that's a problem, and we need to have more people. And I'm starting to really look at this more so as I look at this becoming a bigger and bigger problem. We're not closing the gap on a lot of these opportunities that are existing within these companies. We have, close to 1 million still open recs and some of the stuff, which is ridiculous. We're going to have to start to pick a lot of this up in our high schools and moving into our colleges even more. We're going to have to really start training people out there. We're going to have to begin to look at changing somewhat of our educational system to meet these demands, technology-wise, from education. Our systems, our educational systems right now are a bit too archaic. The new crew that's coming into the White House now and the education people and so forth, it's scary. That we have these folks here who may not really fully understand this, but we are looking at an issue that's going to be a factor 10 years down the road as well, Mike. So I just want to just to highlight that as well.
We haven't even gotten to the H-1B visa thing, so.
Oh no,
that's a whole nother conversation.
That is, but we are not prepared still technically to deal with what we have coming down the pike. I know a lot of people want to say, "Hey, hire me because I'm a great boy," or however they want to say. This is coming down to a skills-based game, where we're going to have to start to hire people, or we're going to start training people in our in our secondary schools, college, and so forth. From high school to college, we're going to really start to train people. We're going to have to change our educational system to somewhat to meet the new demands that exist today, as opposed to our educational system that was really designed to deal with the 1950s and 60s economy. That has changed. That has changed drastically. Yeah. Anyway.
The IT skills shortage situation is not expected to get any better. IDC predicts that by 2026, more than 90% of organizations worldwide will feel the pain of the IT skills crisis,
Wow.
amounting to some $5.5 trillion in losses
Wow.
caused by product delays, impaired competitiveness, and loss of business. We just talked about this. You just mentioned it. You're going to have to go down to the high school level. I agree with you, but I also think that we need to deal with the adult situation first and foremost.
Yeah.
Why are we still having this problem? Why are managers and directors and whoever their titles are, why are they still, holding on to their positions and not being held accountable for the lack of outcome and productivity? That to me, that's a bigger question that I would have as to how are you able to maintain your position with all these gaps, skills gaps, knowledge gaps, human capital gaps, human resource gaps. This is still happening. And I see people on LinkedIn, which is one of the reasons why I don't trust LinkedIn, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 years for an organization, and they're still there in the same position, and no one's able to challenge them, no one's able to say anything to them. And this report comes out that, by 2026, more than 90% of organizations worldwide will feel the pain of IT skills crisis. I don't know what's going on at the top, but I can tell you right now, a lot of that has to do with, institutional, social dominance that goes on inside organizations where they're not allowing anybody to challenge them on their positions, and they don't care about what happens below them. Okay, that's a big problem. And so I know that we can get into the H-1B visa thing another day, but that's why you have an H-1B visa crisis going on before and right now with this new administration coming in. And so I'll table that for another day, but that's definitely where all that's coming from.
And Mike, and I would also like to say a lot of them actually, since you have a lot of people who are there in these positions, they don't know what to do. And they don't want to say it, but they don't know what to do. They don't want to have to take the big bite that they need to do, that they need to take in order to get some of this really done. And once again, as I said, we are looking at a requisitions type of a gap that is moving close to over a million jobs, a million positions. And that's been that way over the last decade. And that is only going to get worse. Hasn't gotten better. So the corporate heads have failed. And we're going to have to really, get very seriously into it and look at what's coming into the White House currently and dealing with this from a larger perspective. You're going to have to go. Unfortunately, Mike, you have to go to the outside because we don't have the bandwidth, we don't have the horsepower in here to internally to deal with this issue.
Yeah. All right. It says closing the cybersecurity skills gap with upskilling programs. The average cost of hiring new tech talent in the U.S. is more than $23,000 and takes 10 weeks, according to respondents. 57% of organizations spend only $5,000 per employee on upskilling. We talked about this earlier, right? Yes, this is the problem. This is the core of the problem. We make record profits. We're on NASDAQ. We're publicly traded. Everybody's doing well according to the LinkedIn profiles and updates and whatnot. But when it comes to spending on employees, you're gonna get 5 clams. No. This is the only industry that this happens in, where there's such a inequality on what the record profits of an organization is versus what they're willing to spend on training and upskilling. And so this is the crux of the issue for me. I don't know about you, Nagone, but for me, this is where it starts at. This unwillingness to spend on employees and then turn around and say, we have a skills gap problem.
That, in fact, is the bottom line. They don't want to do it. They don't want to also bring certain people in to do this. So when they're looking to keep certain people out and all this, what we are doing is we are screwing ourselves down for the future. That's what we're doing. And a lot of people don't seem to understand it, especially those who are outside of the industry. But those who are inside and see what's going on, see exactly what's happening. And at the very top, I don't say these corporate presidents and so forth who are looking at their VEPs and people who are handling these certain areas are not willing to address it. They're thinking very short term. They're thinking about their own quick profits, their stock options only for themselves, and parachuting themselves out of there after a period of time and moving on. They're not thinking very long term, and that's the problem that we have. And the only thing that's going to do is screw us, and it's going to leave others. I'm not going to get into who these others are. Others who are going to be able to take advantage of that, and that's a real danger that we have on the horizon, and we're not even beginning to truly address this issue, and we haven't addressed it for the last 30 years, and it's only going to get worse over the next 20. So there's going to be a 50-year gap in this industry, because the IT industry is relatively new, and we started out as the leaders, but we are rapidly falling behind. And within the next 20 years, if we don't really handle this situation creatively, we're done. We're out of it. I'm sorry to say that, but that's where we are. Anyway, go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
Yeah, 31% of women in tech consider switching roles over the next year. Following AI, women in tech are most interested in developing skills in leadership and management, 37%, and project management at 23%. Respondents say 3 skills most important for today's tech leaders are team communication, emotional intelligence, and active listening. Yeah, the soft skills. Yeah, soft skills are really important. But when you hear that 31% of women in tech consider switching roles over the next year, you can apply that to race as well. I think you see that with Black people a lot more than not. And you definitely see that Black people tend to not. But the report that we read a couple of years ago, I think it was in 2022 or 2023, was that the average Black person in a tech role is 13 months. And for Zennials, it's even less. You're talking 6 to 9 months. So they're not even staying a whole year before they quit their way out of the situation. Mostly because I think what this this survey is pointing out is that the lack of emotional intelligence in the environment, people being disregarding your personal space and the lack of cultural cohesion within the environment makes it difficult for a lot of people to want to stay there. Who wants to really go back to, Amazon, return to office 5 days a week if that's a hostile environment? Who really wants to be there? And so these are and who wants to be on the road more often than they need to? Who wants to be on the train, getting potentially pushed, into the pit or getting slashed or something like that? There's a lot of other factors that drive people to say, I consider switching roles, whether it's because a new technology has emerged like blockchain or AI or cloud, or the environment itself, the workplace environment itself is not hospitable to my interests. And so therefore it's time for me to go. I hear a lot of that, especially from Black women in tech. I hear that a lot, especially when they start having children and they need to take time off and they feel like they got to go back into the office because they can't guarantee that their role is going to be there. I mean, we're seeing cases like this at the EEOC where people are being let go from their positions while they're on maternity leave. So, there's a lot to be juggled in the tech industry, and so depending on what organization you work for, and so everything's not always guaranteed. So.
You're absolutely right. And let's say for Black women, I had to deal with a young Black lady who was on one of our tech teams who was actually let go, and I had a chance to really bring her back and put her on another team, just because I believe personally it was because she was a Black woman. And I'm just a young Black lady who was there, and and the environment was hostile. It's a hostile environment to her, and straight hostility alone. So you're going to have that going on as well, as you have mentioned. So yeah, so there's a lot of challenges. There are a lot of challenges going on there. There's just a lot of challenges for us as Black people on the whole. Of course, we're gonna tend to get more of the worst run of that, but that's just kind of part of the environment. But still, we need to be in there and getting our skills up, because there's going to be as much negativity that we can run into. There's still going to be a lot of opportunity, but we have some very big questions that we're going to have to deal with, and some problems to really solve in the future that's going to have to be dealt with realistically and effectively, because there are some big issues on the horizon, and we're going to have to be creative in meeting them.
All right, last one. Why women struggle in the cybersecurity industry. Women encounter exclusion at twice the rate of men, signaling a pressing need for industry-wide cultural and procedural changes to enhance inclusivity. The report also highlights that women are 5 times more likely to report exclusion from direct managers and peers, pointing to a critical area for organizations to address and create in a more supportive and inclusive work environment. I think that has been going on for a long time. I think it was Sheryl Sandberg that talked about, the lean in aspect. And so you could remove gender, replace race into that, and you can see the same thing for Black folks as well, whether it's Black men or Black women. Feeling like they've been excluded at a significant rate from certain opportunities within their work environment or within the organization, as well as critical information. I've had that experience. I've talked about it many times on here, where I wasn't CC'd on emails. I was being given the wrong directions on purpose to see if I fail, and then blame me for it. I've seen this happen to other colleagues as well, and other people I've spoken to offline from different organizations, where they've been set up for failure. This is still happening even in 2024, and especially with this new administration coming in the next 7 days. You're definitely going to see it there as well. With the anti-DEI movement, anti-affirmative action. You're definitely going to see a lot more marginalization of minority voices and presence within environments. And so I'd be interested in seeing how this works out over the next fiscal year. Any last thoughts, Nicole?
No, I think, you hit some of the key points here. And we kind of right on the money. There's a lot of opportunity here in tech, but there's going to be a lot of challenges. And, I do suggest any Black people who are really looking to really get involved with this, it's a good time, but also there are going to be challenges. So certainly get in, but always keep your eyes open, because that's just kind of where we're at. But Mike, I really appreciate you bringing me up here, and thank you.
Indeed. Thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button on the way out, share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust.